Welcome to the Sideline Report. I'm Marvin Jackson. The Washington Commanders are 4-1, leading the NFC East. The players are excited. The fans are doing the wave in the stands. And here to talk about all that excitement in Washington are Lou Holder, Donna Hopkins, and our special guest, NFL Network's Chief National Reporter, Steve Wyche. Welcome to the show, everybody, especially you, Steve.
Thanks so much for having me.
Sideline Report.
They're doing the wave. They're not swag surfing. Come on, we got to get it going.
Yeah.
Come on, y'all.
Listen, today, to getting Steve Wyche on this program today, like Ice Cube said, today is a good day.
Thanks for having me, guys.
All right. Well, let's start out with Steve. What's your take on all this good success here in Washington right now?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's completely unexpected. The Commanders are one of the real surprise stories of the NFL because we expected them to be better, right? We expected Jaden Daniels to be good. We weren't expecting to be having this conversation in mid-October, right? I mean, this is the crazy thing about it. Like you mentioned, they're 4-1. They're leading the NFC East. And, the reason why I think there were expectations is, Dan Quinn is a culture changer. We saw it when he went to Atlanta. You talk to people in Dallas. So much of what they were able to do is because of his ability to not necessarily see the result, but to see the process. And great leaders, when you go through the process, you develop people. You get people to believe in you and believe in one another. And that is what you are seeing with the Commanders. They're still talent deficient compared to some teams. There's still, a tremendous amount of growth, which to me should be optimistic for the Commanders, right? They haven't peaked. They're still on the uptick. And I think that's why, especially when you see a rookie like Jaden Daniels exploding the way he is, that's where the excitement should be. Not that they're 4-1, but the fact that they're still such an incomplete puzzle and they've got a lot of pieces to put together to really, really be good.
Lou?
I mean, I think those sound bites that we heard at the very beginning, two of them were from people that were brought in to change the culture. Bobby Wagner, I've been saying this from day one. I mean, bringing in Bobby Wagner to stabilize not only the defense, but to add leadership to this team is what you're seeing over and over again. And Austin Eckler, I mean, there's so many parts, as Steve said, that are coming from Dan Quinn saying, hey, look, I want to bring these people here, that you're starting to see it in so many phases of the football team that even though they're talent deficient, they're leadership rich. They have a lot of leadership there, and that leadership is coming up in so many ways that in past years or past seasons, things would spiral out of control if there was a turnover, if a slow start. But that leadership that's being portrayed or being infused all across that team is making this team very, very confident.
I asked this question in the locker room after that game. I said, if you were to describe this team right now, the total team, I talked to both offense and defensive players. I said, how would you describe this team right now? They said fun, energetic, hardworking, culture. They mentioned the culture. Sam Cosby said that, he hasn't been on a team since he's been here, that the culture was good. Steve talked about the fact that culture with Dan Quinn, every team that he's been with, he's been a culture changer. And that is what you're seeing with this team right now, is the culture has changed and this team is buying into the process. When you talk about looking at this team from training camp through the 5 games there, and Dan Quinn talked about each and every game, you can start seeing that they are developing in other areas. They're picking up what he wanted to lay out, the blueprint and everything. You're starting to see that in each game. And it's starting to shape up to what we that have been seeing this team for the last 3 or 4 months, starting to look at it on the field, what they put on paper, what they went through in the classroom. You're starting to gradually see that. But this team is exciting right now about where they're going. This is a hard task coming up against Baltimore. So we're going to see where they at right now. And as Sam Cosby talked to me about, is they haven't been battle tested yet. Where they're about to be battle tested this week, and how they come out this is going to tell a lot about this team moving forward. But right now, this team is having a lot of fun. You can see the energy from the fans to the players and everybody else.
Steve, you said earlier that they might not have as much talent as some of the other elite teams in the NFL. Where would you see them needing a little more talent?
Well, I mean, they've got to upgrade some stuff in the secondary. I mean, you can see that right away. You saw that in the first couple games, especially the corner spot. That's where they've got to get better. And keep in mind, a lot of these guys, like the Bobby Wagners, or maybe Austin Eckler, a lot of these guys are 1-year imports, right? But the one thing they've done, and Lou nailed it, right? These are culture establishers, right? And this is what a lot of strong coaches do: is they get a veteran in every position group room to help the young players come along and say, this is how it's done. So when I'm out of here, this is what you build on. And that's when you talk about establishing some of the talent, that's where they're going to have to go. And Bobby Wagner's gone. Someone's going to have to step in and fill Bobby's place. When Austin Eckler's out, someone's got to do that. And they've got guys like that in just about every position group where you've got to have somebody come in and fill those voids. So that's part of where they're doing. But, look, you don't have to be talent rich to win in this league. Donna, I believe, it was you said, you can be, or Lou, leadership rich. When you have guys who want to show up to work every day, it gets taxing mentally on these young guys to come to work every day. Don, you talked about they're having fun. Do you know how many teams in the NFL right now would like to be having fun? Like the New York Jets, they'd love to be having fun, but they just fired their coach. Like that is a hard thing to do week after week in the NFL. It is. Some people may see it as a cliche. Well, you should be having fun. You're playing football for a living. They're working for a living. This is what they do to put food on the table. And for them to have fun at this point of the season, we'll see how much fun they're having after next week. But that is a very hard thing to do. So kudos to what they're building in Washington. Again, it's not a finished product. 4-1 is great. Still got a lot of season left to go, and this is just a building block of where things could be headed.
If you were watching that game, you could see which team was having fun. Mm-hmm. Cleveland was not having fun.
No, they would love to be having fun right now.
But you mentioned something that was interesting, and we've talked about it, Steve, that Adam, they're playing with house money, as far as they got goo gobs of cap space. They got draft picks. He is setting things up for year 2 and 3, just like he did in San Francisco. So, when I temper people by saying that, there's still a lot of things that still need to be done, but the excitement for a lot of us that know football is that this, like you said, it's not a finished product. And what they're doing right now is like they're ahead of schedule in so many ways, but until they can catch up with the personnel that they need, like you said, the culture and those change agents are there that makes this team having fun while they're going along the process.
Hey, Steve, let's talk about what you have coming up this week. You're going to be in London. Before we talk about the upcoming Baltimore game for Washington, let's talk about what you have going on this weekend. You're going to be in London. Talk about that to our viewers.
Yeah, it's the Jags against the Bears, and let's draw the parallel to the Commanders. Their quarterback, Caleb Williams, who was drafted 1 pick above Jaden Daniels, he's starting to get it. It's starting to come. Now, when he was drafted, we said he couldn't go to a better situation because they've got all these receivers. They've got all these veterans that are in place. A lot of them were not imported. A lot of them were homegrown. So he could be but you saw early on, they struggled. They couldn't figure it out, right? They had a first-time play caller trying to figure out what all these parts do together. Well, now they're starting to catch on fire with a couple big wins in their pocket. They're playing a Jags team that got its first win last week against the Colts, a very talented Jags team, but a team that just, their quarterback, Trevor Lawrence, he's starting to come. You're still waiting to see him really turn the corner. So it's going to be a real interesting game. The Jags are used to playing overseas. They play in London multiple times a year. So look, I'm thrilled to be going there. I'll be doing sidelines on the broadcast. Looking forward to see which one of these teams is really going to continue that upward arc. Because again, we're still so early in the season. One of these teams or both these teams could end up getting red hot and being as much of a fun story as Washington is right now.
Hey, what time will that game be here? It will be early in the morning, right?
9:30 Eastern
And
time.
that's NFL.
9:30. This is the appetizer, right? For the Europe for the 1 o'clock kickoff.
Yes, just
So
get up early,
that's
eat
right.
breakfast, not brunch, right? All right, let's talk about this big game coming up. Washington going against Baltimore, Parkway. And I'm telling you, this game has so much significance. Both teams have great running games going. Both passers and quarterbacks are doing well. Let's start out with Lou. What do you see coming up in this game? And we'll talk about the matchups.
Well, I mean, the I think the stat came out this week, or just the other day, that these two teams are leading the league in offense. So the offense is there on both ends, and this is going to be a big test for both defenses to see who they can stop. I did want to ask Steve one question though. And Steve, you came for training camp and you saw this Commanders team early on. Did you think that they were going to be in a position even early on that they had the fortitude and they had the pieces in place where they could be on a national stage as early as week 6 of the NFL? Did you see something there with the people that you visited and just your visit here?
Well, unfortunately, when I saw them, they weren't in pads yet. And I don't make judgments on teams until they get into pads. But I know a lot of people in that building. The Adam Peters, Dan Quinn, Joe Witt, people on that staff, and I just know how great of coaches they are. And the hardest thing as a coaching staff, especially in this era of offense, and you have a defensive head coach, right, is getting people to buy in. And that's where the process and the culture, again, we keep hitting that word, comes in, where you got to get guys to believe in what you're teaching. You clearly see that, right? These players are playing for one another. They're playing for Jade. Look at how happy they are when Terry McLaurin gets down and makes a play, or when Frankie Louvu makes a play. Like, look at how they celebrate one another. That's important, and that's important going into a game like this, because there could be some adverse moments, right? Derrick Henry could hit a big run where he runs over 2 or 3 guys, right? Guys could hang their heads. Well, no, we'll get up and get him the next time. Jaden, boom, comes in, hits an explosive play, ties the game up. See, we got your back. Right? These are the things that can happen right there. So I didn't see that at that point, because you don't know how a rookie quarterback is going to handle adverse situations. And when I talk to people in that building and around the league, that's the one thing they're saying about Jaden Daniels that's separating him from these other young quarterbacks. He seems to be so poised in stressful moments, whether it's fourth and short, third and whatever, late in games, he's got it. And when the rest of the people see that, okay, this guy's a smooth operator, he's good, he's not freaking out, they're good. All right, let's go ahead and let's make the big play.
Yeah, Steve, I think you hit it on the nail. When you look at this Commanders team, thank goodness the last 2 weeks, this defense is starting to show up, starting to see a little more pressure up front. The leverage is what Joe Witt talked about, that he wanted to see better. Coach Quinn talked about the tackling being better. You can see all those things. And what can we say about Frankie Louvu that has just been a wrecking ball in there? So you need this Washington defense to be good going up against a Baltimore team with that explosive offense that they have. But then when you turn the pages, you got an explosive offense with the Commanders. So you look at the defenses matchups right there. Who's going to be able to stop who? Who's going to be able to stop their running game? Well, when you look at the Ravens, they're number 2, I think, as far as stopping the run. But you look at their passing game, you can throw on them. Commanders, the same thing. You can throw on them, and they've been able to stop the running game a little bit better. But when you're talking about a Derrick Henry, that's a whole different guy to stop. And the way that he's been performing the last 2 weeks, 199, the 2 weeks ago, that 51-yard breakout that he did, they're starting to utilize Derrick Henry, something that they weren't doing in the first few games. So it's going to be interesting to see who can play that cat and mouse game with each other. But definitely it's the quarterbacks that are similar in so many ways that you've got to stop.
Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson are being talked about as MVP candidates on the same team. So that's pretty unusual right there. Who do they have to stop the most? Is it to stop the run game with Derrick Henry, or do they have to stop Lamar Jackson? Steve?
No, it's Derrick Henry. I mean, just when you see the shift, and Donna, you alluded to it. Remember John Harbaugh, it was either after week 1 or week 2. He said, look, we didn't bring Derrick Henry in here to run the ball 30 times a game. Well, the offense was discombobulated. They had those 3 new offensive linemen. They're trying to figure it out. Well, since they've been giving it to him 25 times a game, that offense looks unstoppable. Okay? It's not a hard trick to decipher. So, no, it's him, because you stop him, and then all of a sudden you're forcing the pass game, right? We know the Commanders aren't great yet on pass defense, but you stop Derrick Henry, you stop some of that play action. You stop some of the things that allows Lamar to be creative, and you can settle some things in. The unfortunate thing is what Washington has done the past couple weeks defensively is they've really had like interior pressure, right? In the passing, get in and kind of bounce these quarterbacks out, even though they were mobile quarterbacks like Kyler, like Deshaun Watson. Lamar's a different monster, right? You don't want to bounce him out too much. So they're going to have to really play a very stout front and make him, even if he's standing back there for 10 seconds, don't let him get some of those lanes in the passing game. And I think the same is going to be said for the Ravens when they're looking at Jayden, because the Ravens, man, I have seen them get carved up in their secondary, in their linebacker matchups. If they can scheme up, if Cliff can scheme up some matchups with Eckler on some of their linebackers, hey, you guys might be tired covering this game, because it could be an absolute track meet back and forth.
Lou, Donna?
I just feel that you're on it with so many things. The Ravens struggled to beat the Bengals. I mean, they gave up 38 points, so that defense, they can be had. So yeah, I mean, I actually think it's going to be field position and special teams in this game, because, like you said, they all even out. And then you have this kicker that Adam Peters found after week 1 that has just not missed. And then you have the legendary Justin Tucker on the other side. I wouldn't be surprised if this is one of those games that it comes down to field position and special teams that maybe decides this, because when you look at both of these teams offensively and defensively, man, they're both playing very, very, very well. So that's the interesting and exciting part about this, is that this is a Washington team that, and I'm sure, Steve, if the NFL had it's say, they would try to flex this and move this game, week 6 game, to a prime time, because the 1 o'clock window, it doesn't seem like it can contain the excitement that is going on, not just in the beltways here, but over the entire country and league.
Hey, Lou, too. And the other thing I want to mention is Cliff Kingsbury. The things that he's been doing to dial up the last 2 games, when he took the criticism, and I talk about this because I got to give him his credit. When he took the criticism talking about his offense is vanilla, it's more college style, since that Cincinnati game when he threw the book at them and he shut up everybody's mouth, and then the week later he dials it up again in Arizona, then he comes back and just beats down Cleveland. He knows that he has to be savvy with this Baltimore team, but you have to give kudos to him as far as what he's doing on that offense, as far as bringing out Jayden's strengths and the other other players too. So I like what Kingsbury has been able to do in the last 3 weeks in really making that offense explode right now.
Can I add to that? I mean, Cliff is an incredible play schemer and play designer. But what really balances Cliff out is Anthony Lynn at running back and the run game coordinator, former head coach, former running back. Look, I've covered Cliff for a while, and if Cliff had his druthers, he is throwing the ball 90% of the time. Anthony Lynn is like, don't forget, we got Brian Robinson here. We got some guys who can run block. So we know what you like to do, but come on now, Cliff. We got to run a balanced offense and not put too much pressure on our young quarterback.
Yeah. So let's give props to Wyche too on the defensive end, because every week that defense that was just even with the deficiencies that you said, Steve, they're finding ways, obviously with Louvu and Bobby Wagner in the middle, but man, Armstrong and so many players are now starting to figure it out. Wyche needs to get some praise too, because we've been critical of him too.
He's dialing up some really good pass rush packages. Last week, I saw it. I mean, there was
7
so many
sacks.
different looks.
No, he woke up the defensive front. He woke up
7 sacks.
finally.
And you know what he's done, and this is for some conversations that I've had, is they scaled things back.
Yes.
Right? They've just scaled it back and said, just go play football. Right? We're going to scale it back, stay within this, and go play football. And that's where that mixture that you guys talked about earlier of veterans and young people, knowing the strength of this team is in its front seven, that's where that's really paid off.
Yeah. And that helps out with the defensive backfield. Because when you got pressure on the quarterback, you can play man-to-man.
Can I throw one more thing at Steve? I want to talk about that offensive line and Brandon Coleman and just how, I mean, Brandon Coleman and that offensive line held Myles Garrett. I mean, he was invisible. Like, I mean, there was times where I was like, wait a minute, this is supposed to be a disruptive person in the league. That offensive line has gelled far beyond anybody's expectations so early on.
Because of that running game.
That's where the balance comes in play, right? And you can look at the Ravens as an example of this. And most teams, when their offensive line struggles, if you can run, you can ask anybody who's 6'4", 320, they would much rather be moving forward, pushing people than moving backwards, catching people. And so when you can establish some sort of a run game, especially when you have a hoss like Brian Robinson, then that's how you neutralize these incredible, pass rushers like a Myles Garrett. And they're going to be dealing with some mess this week with Baltimore. Nnamdi Madubuike, Kyle Van Noy is having an incredible season. So they've got to keep those guys on edge. And a lot of ways to do that is to make them play their disciplines and integrity in the run game where they're thinking more than just getting after the quarterback. And if you can play those toe-to-toe games or play with a lead, that makes it a lot easier.
How do you like Eckler?
I was just getting ready to bring him up.
Love him. I mean, I love Austin. I mean, again, I live in LA, so, I had a lot of time with him with the Chargers. And he's, there's a lot of things. And this is where, him and Anthony Lynn, that relationship as well works out. He's so good in the pass game. He's so good in the red zone. And what's incredible is, because of his stature and the way he runs, he hides himself, right? It's like all of a sudden, I'm in this cocoon and bam, he's through a hole and he's gone. So this is where they've got just great tandem work. And Austin brought this up when I was at training camp, Lou, about how him and Melvin Gordon used to have something really working really well with the Chargers. And you can see that now with Brian Robinson, who's a bigger, probably a more physical player than Melvin Gordon was. So again, working that in, and this is where Anthony Lynn, again, not to take anything away from Cliff, but Anthony Lynn being so well versed in the run game and in that scheme helps out everything with what these guys do, even in pass protections.
All right. Well, thanks so much, Steve. Great points. I mean, very, very great points. And thanks to Donna and Lou. Great job, everybody. It was a good team today. We were right up there with the Commanders,
Steve dropping those nuggets, those powerful nuggets.
There you go.
Much more educated.
You guys bring it up to me.
Educated after Steve Wyche comes on the show. Much more educated.
You guys, the culture of the show, you guys uplifted me and made me have to bring my A game plus.
HBCU guy, by the way, viewers. So,
HU. Howard University, baby.
Yeah.
And former Washington Post writer. So, yeah, he knows DC. Thanks so much, Steve. And we'll see. We got to see you again, man.
Wake up early. You'll see me Sunday.
End of the season, before the playoffs.
Have me back. I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys having me. Thank you so much.
Everybody wake up and see that game on the NFL Network this Sunday. And before we leave, we'd like to give our condolences to the Washington football family on the passing of Pat Fisher, one of the all-time best cornerbacks here in Washington. He has actually been on our show a couple times and just a great guy. So we like to just send those condolences to his family and to the Washington football family. So for the Sideline Report, I'm Marvin Jackson. We'll see you next time on the Sideline. Take care, everybody.